Good morning, audience. So, you have already been introduced with the basal insulin by our previous speaker. Please take seat. Srikant Somani. But beyond that, what is available about basal insulin, the new generation basal insulin Gen 2. So, about this, we have a very renowned endocrinologist of the station, Dr. Madhukar Mittal. So he is additional professor here in the Department of Endocrinology, AIIMS Jodhpur. And without wasting further time, I would request Dr. Madhukar Mittal to start his deliberation, please.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Chairperson sir, and thank you, Dr. Anand sir, for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be here in front of this August gathering, and I've been given the task of talking about diabetes management with basal insulin, and I'll just cover a bit of past, present and future with regards to this. So we know basal insulins have become an indispensable component of our insulin therapeutic armamentarium. We refer to this as constant low levels of insulin secreted to maintain blood glucose levels. And this helps particularly through the overnight fasting and interprandial periods, and very essential to suppress hepatic glucose production. Various preparations have come and they have evolved over time, and we all know it's been more than 100 years since the discovery of insulin, where the intermediate and long-acting insulin's journey started in the 40s and 50s with the Lente and NPH insulins. And then we had the basal insulin analogs coming up in the early 2000s. So if we look at the long-acting basal analogs, we had in 2000s coming up in the early 2000s. And then 2015, we had the second generation degludec and glargine 300 coming up. So if you look at a bit of endogenous insulin production from the pancreatic beta cells, where insulin is stored as hexamers stabilized by zinc ions, and when secreted it gets diluted in the bloodstream releasing the zinc, and this disassembles into the monomers, which is the active state of the insulin. And this has been used as for generating the various basal insulin analogs. So this concept of modifications in the hexamer stability, where only the insulin monomers can cross the capillary wall. So the time of onset and duration of onset can thus be increased by increasing the strength of interaction binding between the insulin hexamers. So this challenge of developing the various basal insulins rests on the strategy of delaying the absorption of the molecule, prolonging its half-life, and lowering the frequency of peaks and values, and especially becomes important in today's era of continuous glucose monitoring. And this is to a large extent being met by the various basal insulin analogs. And if you look at the various types, we have the intermediate acting basal insulin NPH, the first generation basal insulins, the glargine U100 and the insulin detamir, which is on the way out. And you have the second generation basal insulin analogs, glargine U300 and the insulin degludec. In future, in pipeline, we have the weekly basal insulin analogs. Prominent among them are the insulin icodec and the basal insulin FC, besides a host of others which are in phase 2, phase 3 trials as well. But just to lighten up things, there's a lot of talk going on everywhere and in WhatsApp everywhere with regards to generic. So if you want generic, you can simply write basal insulin first generation, second generation basal insulin, or you can even move to दिन में 2 बार वाली insulin या दिन में 1 बार वाली insulin, या even in future maybe हफ्ते में 1 बार वाली insulin. Okay, so coming back to the science part of it, the pharmacokinetics and the pharmacodynamics of the basal insulin. We all know about this. The NPH had a peak, the duration of action intermediate, usually twice a day frequency. If you look at the first generation, detamir and glargine 100, covering almost 20 to 24 hours of the basal profile, and with the glargine U300 and the degludec, coverage increases to almost 1.5 days, the duration of action. So let's take a bit of what we know about the first generation basal insulin analogs, and if we look at the efficacy, it's all good till we had the second generation basal insulins. The various RCTs comparing glargine 100 versus NPH and detamir versus NPH. I'm not going to details much here, but suffice to say, if you look into the nuanced part of it, that detamir showed less weight gain than NPH and glargine 100, although it's on the way out now. So the clinical implication of all this evidence lies that there is stable glycemic control, extended duration of action, lower risk of hypoglycemia, especially the nocturnal hypoglycemia, more so with the second generations, once daily dosing with more flexibility, smaller injection volume and comparable HbA1c reduction. So moving on to the more meaty part of today's talk, which is the second generation basal insulin analogs. We had the insulin glargine U300, which is just a threefold concentrated version of the insulin glargine U100, approved in 2015. You need to give a smaller volume of the injection. It's a more compact subcutaneous depot with smaller surface area and thus a more prolonged action. There is more gradual and slower release from this depot surface. So it covers almost 36 hours the duration of action. And if you look at the comparison with regards to the U100 pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, if we see the red lines, we find that there is lower peak and longer duration of action. The glucose lowering effect is slightly lower than the U100 glargine at the same dose levels, but there is more prolonged action going on to beyond 24 hours. And when we go back and look at the data of what initially years we find 24 hours coverage by U100, we find it sort of the effect lowers on beyond 21 hours was there. So higher doses are needed for the same glycemic control with U300. It's been seen in studies in type 2 around 12% and in type 1 around 17% higher dosages, although the volume would become significantly less. So the microprecipitate here remains in subcutaneous space longer and there is local degradation by proteases. The dose may go even up to a high end of 20% to reduce the hypoglycemia risk. This was a study in Diabetes Care 2017, glargine 300 versus glargine 100, where less increase in CGM-based glucose levels in the last 4 hours of the 24-hour injections was seen, smoother average 24-hour glucose profiles, and reduced nocturnal hypoglycemia. More than half of these individuals experienced lesser nocturnal hypoglycemia, which was a significant concern seen by the various CGM profiles, which we are missing by multiple times daily monitoring. Insulin degludec, the longest acting insulin analog currently in use. It's a modification in the human insulin at B30, 16C and B29. This is due to a zinc and phenol preservative and exits as a dihexamer in solution, and there is a fatty acid chain as well. So after injection, there is dilution of the phenolic preservative in the subcutaneous space. The dihexamers self-associate forming multi-hexamers. Significant slowing of this hexamer dissociation happens, and binding of the monomers to albumin also slows disposition to peripheral tissues and clearance. So multiple mechanisms why leading to a prolonged action. And if you can see here, there is near constant plasma level with minimal peak to trough, reducing day-to-day variability again. Available as 100 IU and 200 IU, the time action here is not impacted by the concentration here as compared to the glargine U300, where that's the basic mechanism. When switching to a different basal insulin, residual insulin action may be there for 42 hours. So when you are switching off degludec, please be aware that its action will persist. So when you start on a different insulin, start with slightly lower dose. Suppose you are switching from a degludec to a glargine or some other insulin. So please be careful with that. Okay. This is the switch 1 randomized clinical trial, insulin degludec versus glargine U100. Here again, reduced rate of symptomatic hypoglycemia was seen. This is the DEVOTE study where degludec was shown non-inferior to glargine. Severe hypoglycemia again reduced 5% versus 6.6%, but this was a significant difference here again. So RCTs comparing degludec versus glargine 100 and glargine 300 versus glargine 100 in type 2 diabetes are there. With the use of degludec, a lower dose was required as compared to the usual glargine which we are using. With glargine 300, a higher average dose was required. So these differences, when we in clinical practice, we need to keep in mind. Lower weight gain was documented with glargine 300. So if you are concerned about maybe some weight, you can try and use that. And maintain glucose for the period of 20 to 24 hours with the use of glargine 300, which was not there with glargine 100. Meta-analysis has been published. Risk of nocturnal anytime hypoglycemia was significantly better with the use of these drugs. There is an RCT comparing degludec with glargine 300, and if you can look at this, just minute differences in the early titration period of 0 to 12 weeks, glargine 300 fared better than degludec. But overall, there was no difference in the risk of hypoglycemias between degludec versus glargine 300. So, if we summarize all this evidence with regards to the second generation analogs, we find predominantly there is lower risk of hypoglycemia compared to first generation. Similar efficacy in reducing HbA1c. We know longer and more stable pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. Glargine 300, 20% lower within day variability. So if you are using CGM, you will find lower within day variability than even degludec. Predictable and stable glycemic control beyond 24 hours. With degludec, activity up to 42 hours and 4 times lower day-to-day variability with the use of the newer CGM devices. I'll touch upon a bit about the upcoming basal weekly insulins. What has been the rationale for using the basal weekly insulins or developing them? There is still a significant, as was talked by previous speakers, a clinical inertia to start off with insulin, be it from the clinician or patient point of view. There are concerns regarding hypoglycemia and weight gain, fear of injections, anticipation with regards to adherence to therapy of injectables, reduced quality of life, so on and so forth. And the median delay to insulin initiation has been seen to be around 4 to 5 years. So once weekly regimen is placed very significantly to sort of overcome this gap of inertia and may encourage even more use of basal insulins. So icodec is the one most intensively investigated once weekly insulin analog. It's a modification in the human insulin at the various levels of 3 amino acid substitutions and attachment of a 20C fatty diacid to the beta chain. Half-life is approximately 7 days. Strong reversible binding to albumin, reduced insulin receptor binding and reduced rate of insulin receptor mediated clearance underlie its prolonged pharmacokinetic profile. Achieves steady state after 3 to 4 weekly injections. So it takes a while, it will take a month to sort of achieve a steady state. Additional insulin may thus be required for this initial period of 3 to 4 weeks. So by the time suddenly sugars may rise, we need to be aware of that. 1 unit of icodec provides the same glucose lowering as 1 unit of comparator daily basal insulins. So the dose may look high, but it will be equivalent to the daily ones. So this is the ONWARDS 1 trial where greater HbA1c reduction was seen with icodec versus glargine. Time spent in glycemic range with CGMs was significantly higher and similar adverse events were seen. So no significant higher adverse events were seen. This ONWARDS trial program, 6 phase 3 trials reported better glucose control in most of them. It has a brighter prospect of once weekly therapy because you reduce the injection numbers by almost 85%. So if you can see here, there is significant reduction of HbA1c in ONWARDS 1, ONWARDS 2 and ONWARDS 3. With regards to hypoglycemia, similar rates were seen in type 2 diabetes. There is a concern with the onward 6 because higher hypoglycemic events were seen in type 1 diabetes with its use. Coming to the other one, the basal insulin FC, it's a fusion protein combining a novel single chain insulin variant together with a human IgG2 FC domain. Mean half-life of 17 days, shown to have a lower peak to trough ratio, so much flatter insulin profile, shown to be safe and efficacious in the phase 2 trials. There is an ongoing QUINT phase 3 program. This is the publication in Diabetes Care 2023, where it demonstrated non-inferior HbA1c change from baseline with treatment difference of around 0.06%. Rate of level 2 hypoglycemia was low and not significantly different, and no severe hypoglycemias were reported. So if you look at the various once weekly preparations which are in the pipeline, besides Icodec and BIF, you have the AKS single chain fusion variants. Insomira is another one, with various structural features to sort of prolong its action to beyond and make it a weekly insulin. Coming to a bit about practical considerations with whatever basal insulins we have today. We talked about the Indian profile of postprandial, a much more contribution as HbA1c increases of fasting. So higher the A1c, stronger the indication for a basal insulin use, because that's why it would reduce the hepatic glucose output. We all know these indications for initiation, starting dose of 0.1 to 0.2 units per kg. May start with 10 units, but remember the ceiling of 0.5 units per kg per day is what we are looking at, and not to go beyond that, because that would probably put the patient at risk for more hypoglycemias. In the era of CGM, where we are talking about time in range, time below range and above range, and glycemic variability is another one which we need to keep in mind, and basal insulins score here again, especially the second generation ones, where besides improving the time in range, they also decrease glycemic variability to a significant degree. Each 10% drop in time in range has been shown to be associated with increase in risk of retinopathy to the tune of 64%, risk of peripheral neuropathy to 25%, and effect on the kidney to increase microalbuminuria to the tune of 40%. So that may be another thing to look at. This was the in-range trial where continuous glucose monitoring was used based on time in range using Glargine 300 versus insulin degludec, and it was seen almost similar effects in terms of meeting the primary endpoints of time in range, the glucose coefficient of variation, which is a measure of glycemic variability, and overall HbA1c reduction. So indications for time in range could cover the whole spectrum of diabetes management, of type 1 diabetes, even patients on oral diabetics, gestational diabetes, looking for hypoglycemia, even now going on to monitor diet, impact of exercise, and in fact sports persons are using it to measure the fuel consumption and how it's helping them in their exercise regimen. So if you look at the 280 recommendations, which says 70% target in range for the usual type 1 and type 2, high risk you can reduce this to more than 50%, type 1 diabetes in pregnancy again 70%, but there are patients of type 2 diabetes where we can go even to the tune of 90%, especially during pregnancy and gestational diabetes. So we need to be more aggressive there. This is an important slide, switching to newer basal insulins, and if I can just spend a bit of time here, if we can look here from insulin Glargine 300 units, if we are moving to insulin Glargine 100 units, we need to reduce the dose by 20%. So there may be patients who are coming on a previous insulin and come to you for the first time and say, I want to change my insulin, doctor. So it's costly, or this insulin is not having a benefit, please switch to a newer insulin. I want a newer, better insulin, cost is not an issue. So one must be aware of what modifications one can make when writing the initial prescription. So from Glargine 300, if you want to go to Glargine 100 or even degludec, reduce the dose by 20%. If you are moving from glargine 100 to glargine 300, you may need to increase the dose by 10 to 20%. But same dose goes for degludec. There is a slight 3 to 4% increase required, but that's almost minimal. Again, if you are moving from say detamol to the others, same dose. Detamol twice a day if a patient was on, you need to reduce the dose when you write either glargine 100, 300 or degludec by 20%. If you're going for NPH, again same dose, but NPH twice a day, reduce the dose by 20%. So it's important as a quick ready reckoner. I usually keep it in my mobile as a ready reckoner when I want to change the insulins. So I'll just summarize here. Basal insulins are designed to have a protracted time action profile to facilitate 24 hours glucose control. Distinct mechanisms of protraction or prolonged life because based on distinct pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. Understanding these differences amongst the various basal insulins helps us to make appropriate treatment decisions. I didn't talk about fixed ratio combinations of basal insulins with GLP-1 receptor agonists, but I feel that's a very good combination. I don't know why companies do not promote it or not freely available. The future of once weekly insulin looks bright, shown to have a good similar glycemic control with reduced hypoglycemic episodes, with significantly reduced number of injections, and we should await eagerly the results of the various phase 3 trials. Before I end, I'll just, because since we're talking about insulin, we always talk about the initial discovery of insulin, when it all started, but this is the first letter to Banting by Teddy Ryder, where he wrote, "Dear Dr. Banting, I wish you could come to see me. I am a fat boy now and I feel fine. I can climb a tree. Margaret would like to see you. Lots of love from Teddy Ryder." So over a period of few months, he gained significant weight. He was amongst the few first children, first 4, first 12, whatever you call them, to receive insulin after it was discovered. He lived a fulfilling life and died at the age of 76 years in 1993. So at that time, he was the longest living person to have received insulin for so many years. Charles Best and almost all the discoverers of insulin actually died prior to him. So he was the last patient, outlived all the physicians. In fact, came in the newspapers, we have lost our last living link with the great events of 1922 in Toronto. You know, the discovery of insulin itself lives on daily in millions of diabetics around the world. This is another one of the females, Elizabeth Evans Hughes, where an award, a medal has been instituted in her name, the Elizabeth Evans Hughes Insulin Medal. It's presented to all diabetics who have been treated with insulin for 50 years or more and who have a connection with Wales. So it's in commemoration of her. Her father, in fact, was one of the US presidential candidates and went on to become the Secretary of State and one of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States of America. This is the Banting House in London, Ontario, Canada. It's been designated as a historical monument of Canada, where the flame runs continuously. The house also has a museum and an office there. The letters can even be sent now, and people still send letters, diabetics using insulin there. They can even submit online or go physically and submit letters, thank you letters to dear Dr. Banting. Thank you.
Very nice talk, and you explained very well about various ultra long acting insulin. There are one or two queries or clarification I would like to seek from you. We have come out with glargine 300, and you say the dose of glargine 300 has to be increased when you are switching out from glargine 100 to 300. So obviously the cost will also increase, whereas the efficacy wise both are same in terms of time in range or hypoglycemic incidence and all. So what is the use of, why this glargine 300 has been introduced? When the patient is not getting benefited cost-wise and efficacy-wise, both are same. Only for the volume of benefit, only for the benefit of volume, I don't think we should penalize the patient monetarily.
So whatever happens with generation 1 and generation 2, the same difference. So it is not pertaining to Glargine 300 alone, it pertains to both Glargine 300 and degludec. So there will be no difference as such between if we use degludec or Glargine 300. Cost is almost similar, either you use degludec or Glargine 300, we know that. So both Glargine 300 and degludec are costlier than Glargine 100. The only advantages which trials have shown is one, lower risk of nocturnal hypoglycemia with the use of generation 2 insulins versus generation 1. There is, if we want to sort of do a more nuanced thing, a slightly lesser weight gain with Glargine 300. These are the two things, important ones, which we can look at. Also, what is more relevant is there is a prolonged peakless profile beyond 24 hours. So when we talk about Glargine 100, previously we thought that its action or duration of action lasted or covered the full 24 hours. But what we now know is, suppose we are using Glargine 100 and its action wanes off around 20-21 hours, we will find the basal sugar values, glucose values rising for those 3-4 hours.
Please address the audience.
And this sort of covers, especially when we are looking at people who have very good control or who want very good control, where we are targeting HbA1cs near sort of our target range of 6.57%. We may not be able to achieve that full time in range over those 24 hours where we want to cover the last 3-4 hours. So if we have individuals having slight rise in fasting but very good control throughout the day, we may want to switch. So there are definite indications where we can use these molecules. Yes, cost is an issue here, but if cost is not an issue, obviously generation 2 insulins we use. Whether degludec, whether Glargine 300, that's an indication.
Any question from audience, please?
Compared to Glargine, the flexibility. All other advantages you have already enumerated, but the flexibility means the timing. Like any time the patient, if once forget taking the insulin, he can take even later time, or even in the night they can take in the morning.
It gives us some window of additional few hours over there. So that's definitely an advantage. But if the patient forgets it for 2 days, that sort of advantage goes away because its action starts waning. So that advantage is there. Sometimes you forget. Yes, so that's a definite advantage there.
But is that flexibility there with Glargine 300?
Yes.
As compared to degludec?
It's your pick. 36 hours versus 42 hours.
That is too big a period.
So it all depends on how many hours the patient is forgetting. Yes, Dr.
So one of the advantages of Glargine 300 over degludec was in CKD patients, because it caused lesser nocturnal hypoglycemia, especially in CKD patients. So that is one of the major advantages.
Definitely. So there was almost a 50% reduction. There was a reduction, as I showed in my slides, with degludec as well, but that was 5% versus 7%. So if you treat 100 patients, the reduction in hypoglycemia, you compare what number suits you. So you say 50 versus 70 if you treat 1000 patients, versus 50 versus 100 if you treat 1000 patients. Glargine 300 versus degludec. So statistics has a way of catching up with things. So you want to play with numbers 50 versus 70 or 50 versus 100. That all depends on you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, thank you very much, Dr. Madhukar, for a very nice talk on new generation basal insulins.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madhukar Mittal. I request you to please be on the stage. It's a felicitation time. I request the moderator, Dr. A.S. Devra, and the chairperson, Dr. Narsingh Mathur and Dr. H.K. Sharma, to please felicitate Dr. Madhukar Mittal, presenting a certificate and a memento. I request you, Dr. Madhukar Mittal, to please felicitate our chairperson to Dr. Narsingh Mathur and Dr. H.K. Sharma.